Oh, hi, welcome back to our channel. Today's video is a part of our tips and tricks tutorial series showing how I specifically do things based on questions that I am frequently asked when it comes to crochet, a little mini how does Andrea do it tutorial series. Today I'm going to be showing you something that I am asked frequently is if I were going to do a granny square for a pocket for a cardigan, but overall it will give you the rough idea on how I in general do my granny squares. Keep in mind this is just a little mini how-to video on how I specifically do it. There are a lot of different ways, a lot of other great tutorials out there. So if this is something that you do enjoy and you like this style video, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more. Let's get started. For today's video, I will be using this worsted 4-weight yarn. It is acrylic, Red Heart Super Saver. Now this is the jumbo stripes because it is the larger skein. It is the color Bright Stripe, and it does call for a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook, but it is all personal preference based on the project you are going for. And for today's project of just a standard granny square, I am going to be using a J6 millimeter, which is my personal preference hook. This is one of our collection hooks that my husband has made for me, and it does have a Clover brand metal neck placed in one of the handles. Now, as always, you will hear me recommend using whatever hook size works best for you in your personal tension. Now, this will base on the pattern and the style of yarn you are using, of course, but you can use whatever hook size that the yarn tells you to do. But when it comes to something simple like a granny square, it is definitely a personal preference. So go based on your own tension and what you prefer. Now, to start the granny square, what I like to do is to create a slip stitch, which you can do however you would like to. I know everybody does them differently. And I do a chain 3 start to complete and go around into a circle. You can do a magic circle if you wish, but this is just my personal preference. I do, again, keep a nice loose tension, but make sure that your stitches are controlled and even. Once I have my chain 3, I will go into this first chain from the chain 3, and I go into what I like to label it the back bump. Again, some people will call it different things, but I go into this back bump section of my first chain, and I will do a slip stitch. And then right here is also important for keeping that loose tension so that you can get into this circle, because this is where you will be working your stitches from here on out. So what I like to do is I always start my granny clusters, which is what we're going to be showing here is a granny cluster for your granny square. I start them with a chain 3 to get my height. You can do a chain 2 if that is your personal preference, but with my loose tension, this is just my preference for this. So I will do a chain 3, and I will space this apart, kind of, pull it apart in the center a little bit, because this is where you're going to be putting your stitches, as I mentioned. We are going to do a double crochet, but this chain 3 is going to count as your first double crochet. So if you have not done a double crochet before, you will yarn over, you will go down into the circle, you will yarn over and pull through a loop, and you will come up with 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 2 of the loops on your hook, leaving you 2 more. Yarn over, pull through the last 2, and that will create your double crochet. Again, I am not a professional with teaching how to do the individual stitches, but that is just a very quick little tip there for that, and hopefully that was understandable. So right here we have our first 2 double crochets, because again, that chain 3 counts as the first, and then our second, and we are going to do 1 more to create our granny cluster or granny stitch. So then we have that 1 more double crochet that gives us 3, and we have our first cluster. Now for a granny square, there are 4 sides to a square, so you will have 4 even sides, 4 even clusters around, and you do have to have 4 corners, and I will show you how to get those. Me personally, what I like to do is a chain 3 for my corners. You can do a chain 2. I don't necessarily suggest doing a chain 1, but again, if that is your preference and that is what you want to do, nobody's telling you that you can do it that way or not do it that way, whatever you like. We are going to then, I like to scooch my cluster over a little bit, because I will do for the granny square 1 more cluster on this side of that knot of my slip stitch. Just personal preference, and you will hear me say that a lot when it comes to these things, because they're very easily modifiable and you can kind of move them around and do as you wish. So we are going to do 3 more double crochets in the center. There was 1, 2, and 3. And that is going to give you your second granny stitch or your second granny cluster. You have 1 chain 3 so far, and this is your corner. So we have a cluster, chain 3, cluster, so this is half. We will now do another 3 chains, and then we are going to put another granny cluster or granny stitch directly in the center of that circle to get our third side. 1, 2, 3 double crochets. We always want to make sure we put those chains between for our corner. Again, your preference on how many, but for the purpose of this, we are doing 3. And then we are going to do our last side with another 3 double crochets. And this is going to give us our 4th side. Now, the important part here is to make sure that you always do one last corner. That is key, because if you were going to connect in right here, it is just not going to work for you. So make sure you put one more corner of your chains, again, chain 3 for me, and we are going to connect into this top chain of your first chain 3. It's a little hard to see sometimes, but you will want to go directly into it here, and you are going to do a slip stitch. So you will yarn over and just pull through and pull directly through and kind of give it a little snug tug there. And then there we have our 4 sides, and this will start your granny square. So from here we are going to do the next handful of rounds. I will show you how I start them and the little key points that I think are important. So to start the next round, what I like to do, as always, chain 3. Again, this is for my height and will count as 1 double crochet for me. Now there are going to be some little tips that you will see alternate between the next few rounds, and I will show you those as we get to them. Now what I will do is I will have this one, which will be a part of a cluster, but just not yet. We're going to move directly into this corner, and we are going to put 3 double crochets. So we are going to put 1 granny cluster stitch into the corner, so 3 double crochets. Of course, feel free to pause this, whatever you need to. If I move too quickly, I apologize. We will do another chain 3 because we are going to create another corner. So we are going to then put another granny cluster stitch right here into the same exact corner. If you have to, you can always kind of, you can work with it. You can kind of move it around a little bit. Move that over if you need to. There was 1 double crochet. Here is 2. And here is 3. Oops, and keep grabbing hold of that. So right here we have the start where we went to, and then we put this into the corner. Every corner you are going to do this. Every corner you get to, you will put 3 double crochets, a chain 3, 3 double crochets. Now for round 2, we are just immediately going over to this next corner here. I do not put chains between my granny stitches. There are a lot of different ways you can do it. Again, personal preference, my favorite thing to say. You can put a chain 1, you can do a chain 2, you could do chain 3, all depending on your tension, of course. But for the purpose of this video and the way that I specifically do it, I do not put chains between. When I get to the next round, you will kind of see why I do it, because I feel like it ultimately gives me a little bit more uniform and neat looking clusters. And you will see that when we get there. But for now, we are going to go directly into this next corner. We will put a double crochet, a second double crochet, and a third double crochet. So we put a granny stitch or granny cluster in the corner, and we're going to just repeat that corner the same way we did here with a chain 3 and then another granny cluster. I'm going to just move right along here because, you know, let's just be real. We want to just keep moving on, right? So we are going to move right here to the next corner. There is no chain between, and we are going to put another granny stitch with a chain 3 and another granny stitch, or cluster as also called. So we have 3 double crochets, chain 3, 3 double crochet. We will do that one more time here in this corner, but I will show you how to do it in your final corner. So you go in and you put your cluster, so 3 double crochets. If that yarn will stop playing around with me. And we're gonna start getting to that color change here, which is gonna be fun. 3 chains. Now, at the end of this, you will remember that we already have this chain 3, which is going to count as a part of the cluster here. So we are going to do 2 double crochets. Okay, yep, 2 double crochets. And what we're going to do is this is going to complete our cluster. We're going to go into that 3rd chain up, and we are going to put a slip stitch. So go into the stitch, grab your yarn, pull over that loop, pull through, and then snug little tug, and we have the completed next round. For round 2, what we are going to do is it is going to be a little bit different. Now you will find a few different tips and techniques with these. Each person that is going to teach these will be a little bit different. It is all personal preference. Andrea's favorite word. What you will do is you can find different people who will teach it a few different ways. Now you can make this what I like to call just a continuous granny, and that will ultimately, depending on the size, it can give you a little bit of a wobble. It's not that it won't lay flat, but it can give a little bit of a pull. Now, if you are just doing small squares, this is not going to matter. A little bit bigger, you will notice that it will get a little bit of an angle to it. It can kind of get a bit of a curve. Again, it's really just going to depend on the project and what you're doing this square for. Ultimately though, if you end up doing a massive blanket where it was just a blanket where it is just one very large square, it's really not going to matter because it will even itself out. But one thing that you can do is you can turn your work and start working going backwards. So that is another tutorial for another time. However, I don't do that. I will just do the continuous to just keep going around without turning my work. So we are going to start this next round with a chain 3. And now this one starts our cluster, as we mentioned before. Now the thing is the way that this cluster was, is it was on this side of your work. This one here starting is now on this side of your work. So every row alternating from here on out, you will do the starting of the row like you did on this next round or on this round previous. And then you will start this round doing it a little bit different, and that will alternate each time through that you do it. So what you will do is you will put right here in this gap 2 more double crochets, which you will notice is different than the start of the previous round, or time through row, whatever you would like to call it. And this is going to give you your first cluster. Now again, no chains between, and we are going to go directly into this corner, and we are going to put a granny cluster of 3 double crochets. We are going to do a chain 3 as always for the corner, and another granny cluster. So 3 more double crochets. Now for this round, you will notice that we're not going directly to this corner because we do have this space here. So we're going to work another cluster here, again with no chains between, and you will notice that we will end up getting 2 spaces for this round, and that will just continuously grow as you continue to do your rounds or rows, whichever you prefer to call them. So we are then going to work into now this corner and do another standard corner for our granny square, which is another cluster of 3 double crochet. Ooh, my yarn's starting to come towards me. Another chain 3 and another cluster 3 double crochets. So the way that we have this here is we have our corner, and then we have these 3 technically, so you will get 2 spaces. The next round you will have 3 spaces. The next time around you will have 4, and that will continue to grow. So I am going to stop from here and I will continue on, and I will meet you back at the end to show you how to connect, and we will go from there. So you will just keep repeating this until you get back to here. And from here you can see that we have done all 4 corners. We have done them all the same way. We are making it back to figure out what we need to do to connect this. We're going to connect it ultimately the exact same way. And we are going to now, instead of having to put the extra 2 here, because we technically have that full cluster right here, we don't need to create another cluster. So we are just going to go into this top chain of that first chain 3 starter. We are going to do a slip stitch connection, pull through, and we have the second round. So I am going to show you another few rounds of this so you can kind of see how it will grow, and it will give you an idea of how the evenness of these clusters will lay as well, doing them without the chains in between. Starting this next round, we are going to get a chain 3 to start, and if you recall, it is going to be the same as this first one here. We had that chain start on this side of our work, so we are not going to create our first cluster here. We are going to go immediately into this next space. Where 2 rows back you immediately went into a corner, but you have a space here you want to work in, so you are going to put a cluster of 3, so a granny stitch. And then we're going to move and do our corners the way we did before. So we are going to do 3 double crochet, a chain 3, 3 double crochet to create our corner. And then we will put a cluster here, and then do another corner here. So I'm going to stop, I will speed this up, and then I will meet you back at the beginning here. Now, as you can see, we are at the end of this time around, and what we're going to need to do is we need to end this the way that we did 2 times back. So 2 rows down back. We are going to wrap completely around this with another 2 double crochets because that first chain 3 counts as our third to create our cluster. We will do 1, 2 double crochets, and then we're going to go, as always, into that top chain of the 3 chains that we created to start with, and we will do a slip stitch to connect, and there we have it. So this here is a handful of rows in. It depends if you want to count this as 1. I typically don't. I count this as my start, and then this is 1, 2, 3 rounds or rows. It is all just personal preference and what you like to call it. Now from here, you could leave this as is. There's a lot of really great things that you can do with these squares. As you can see, this one does not have any pull or turn to this yet. It kind of does as it gets a little bit of weight to it. But these can be done in a lot of different ways. You can do these squares by changing up your hook size, making them smaller, and you can then do much smaller squares. So there are just tons and tons of projects that you can do. You can do one super large square and create a blanket from it. You can turn these into vests. You can turn them into cardigans. You can make bags with them. There's just so many different great things that you can do with just a very classic granny square. And honestly, finding a good color change yarn or changing your colors around, there's a lot of really fantastic colorways that you can play with to get something really fun out of it too, and get a really nice, fun, modern effect on them. So for this, if I was going to want to turn this into a pocket, I'm just going to show you from here versus going on to the next round or needing to do any further. Once you get the size that you are wanting with your square, if you wanted to turn this into a pocket, as I said, you can leave this as is. I personally like to get a nice border on it, and I will usually do so with a single crochet. You can also do a half double crochet if you wish. I'm just going to show you what I personally do with a single crochet. Again, this would not necessarily be the size pocket I am going for. If I was going to do this for a cardigan, I would go maybe a round or 2 larger, but overall we can kind of just get to the point here. So let me show you what we would do. So to put our single crochet border around this, what I would do is I would chain 1. Now I am going to go directly into this same spot here that I went into for connection. That is just personal preference. You do not have to do that. Again, we're going to hear Andrea say personal preference a lot, but it really does come down to it a lot with crochet. Unless you are following a very, very set, specific pattern, it really is just what you prefer. So I am going to do a single crochet right here in this same connection space, so in that top chain. And to single crochet, I already have my starting loop on here. We're going to go directly into the stitch. We're going to yarn over and grab the yarn, pull through. Now, as you can see, we'll typically notice that I do pull up a little bit because this is what's helping me get an even tension and an even stitch height. And I am then going to yarn over and pull through the 2 loops. That gives me a single crochet. Now we are going to then single crochet in each one of the tops of these until we get to this corner, and I will let you know what I personally do there. So we are going to put even stitches. You want to keep the same tension you were working with your double crochets, but putting them in your single crochets. And we're going to work across. Okay, now this right here, I will tell you, is something that confused me a lot when I was starting. I would naturally look at this and think, oh, okay, is this space right here the top of this stitch? And that used to confuse me a lot, and I would end up with more stitches than what I needed to, and it would give me uneven. So I remember here that this is where I am putting my starting single crochet in, and then I have technically 6 stitches. Now, if you have to count a lot of them, that can get hectic, obviously, if you have a really big square or really big side you're working on. But for the preference of this, we can see that there is 6 stitches. So I would have 1 to start with, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That lets me know that I actually put my single crochets into the proper spots, and now this is our corner and not to go in here. Now this might be obvious to some other people. It was just something that gave me problems at the start. So if it is something that you are unsure of, you can always count your stitches across until you are visually able to see it a little bit better. So for the corners here, what I am going to do is put another 2 single crochets directly into the corner. I am going to chain 3, and I am going to do 2 more single crochets. You know what? Let's chain 2, because we can see that this is a little looser, right? So again, it's really just going to depend on what you like and your personal tension. So we did a chain 2 and 2 more single crochets into that corner. That looks a little bit better. Now, you do not have to put chains in there if you do not want to. You can just go ahead and continue with single crochets if you like. I typically will also just do the chains. I can move along fairly quickly. If you were to decide to put single crochets, you can do so. You just want to make sure that it helps keep that corner tight. So you could do, instead of the 4 single crochets, you could do 5, you could do 6, something to just help give shape to this so that they don't start bowing and bending. Now I already worked a couple more single crochets here, and that's ultimately all you're going to end up doing, is just continuing to single crochet down until you get to the next corner, 1 in each of the tops of those stitches. And we're going to do another 2, chain 2, and 2 more single crochets. Get that yarn on it. And we have that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop, and I will speed this up and get you back to the beginning. So you will just continue that down around, do your single crochets in the tops, 2 single crochets, chain 2, 2 single crochets, work your way around, and I will meet you back at the beginning. Now right here you can see that we have 1 space left that we do need to add a single crochet to, so I'm going to place that. And then right here we have reached our connection, so either the end, the beginning, whatever you like to look at it. And this here is where our first chain was when we started the row to get that height for that stitch. We're going to completely skip that, and we're going to go into the top of the first single crochet. We're going to go through both of those little loops of that V, so the top of the stitch. We're going to yarn over and pull through with a slip stitch. We're going to give it a little snug pull, and there you have it. So depending on what you were making your squares for, this could be where you are wanting to stop. You can end up making a bunch of these. You can do whatever you're wanting to, again, depending on the project that you are working on. I hope this helped and answered any questions. I hope I didn't move too fast for anybody. However, again, this is not the technical size that I would use for a pocket. This is just to kind of give that quick look, but you can use this for a pocket. At this point, I would cut this off and then weave the ends in, and then go ahead and do whatever it is that you are wanting to do with the project. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you have any further suggestions on tips and tricks tutorials on things that you would like to see the way that I personally do them, feel free to let me know. And if you like this style video, as we said, be sure to subscribe to the channel. So I hope you enjoyed the video, you guys, and I will see you later. Have a good day.